Well, I think the good news 2 years after Hurricane Katrina is that the New Orleans region as a whole has certainly rebounded. It has recovered nearly 80% of its population and over 80% of its job base. But the problem is that the region-wide numbers hide what's happening inside the city of New Orleans and even in St. Bernard Parish, which are the two most hard-hit communities after the storm. Well, I think the real challenge is how do we move and accelerate the progress in the city of New Orleans. And there we see, again, some good signs, which is the fact that families are returning. There's about 68% of the population has come back to the city of New Orleans, but we still have a lot more work to do. And the main challenges are, one, the housing recovery is still lagging. There are still many, many homes, many apartments that still need to be rebuilt to accommodate returning families and existing families. There are still many homeowners who do not have the resources to rebuild their homes. The second main challenge is basic city services. Basic city services matter for families and businesses as they make a decision whether they stay in the city or relocate to the city. And here we have real challenges. Families and business care about safe streets, good schools, functioning water sewer infrastructure, and in all of these cases we see some real problems. Only half of the schools have reopened 2 years after the storm, which is creating some overcrowding conditions in the classrooms, and in some ways families are hesitating to take their children back to school. Crime rates have gone up, and part of the reason why crime rates have risen so much is the fact that the criminal justice system just doesn't have the facilities to do their work. There are not enough prisons, there are not enough police stations, there are no crime labs for collecting evidence so they can get their job done. That's a real challenge. And at the same time, there are so many leaks in the water sewer system that the water pressure is just completely uneven in the city, and the list goes on. So that really feeds to the frustration that families and businesses are seeing. I would say the last challenge is really about the cost of living. The fact that there are so many homes that are still not rebuilt as families are returning is that there's a really limited housing supply, and that is driving up prices. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is rent levels have gone up in the city, and that is added on top of the fact that insurance rates and insurance premiums have nearly doubled. The cost of rebuilding, the buying of materials have gone up. So in general, what families are feeling in a sea of a lot of still dysfunction is their cost of living has gone up. Their out-of-pocket expenses are going up, and that is adding to a lot of frustration for families about whether they can stay in a situation for that much longer. I think one of the things that we have to remember is that we are at the beginning of a long-term recovery process. There were 100,000 homes that were damaged by the storm. Even the most robust housing markets, say in California or Florida, can maybe generate 10,000 new units of housing a year. So if you think of that pace in rebuilding 100,000 units, we're talking about 10 years at minimum. So we have to understand that it's going to take time. And the hope is, as we move into the next year with a new president and even a new governor in Louisiana being elected this fall, that the future leadership at the federal, state, and local level will keep the Gulf Coast a priority. The federal government has spent about $115 billion towards Gulf Coast recovery. One of the things that we have to remember, though, is that of the $115 billion, only 35% has been dedicated to the long-term recovery needs of the region. So when the president today announced that he spent 80% of the money has been spent down in the Gulf Coast, the vast majority of the money was spent during the emergency phase of the storm, going to the Red Cross, going to the trailers, going to support the cleanup and debris of the city. But the hard work of infrastructure repair, housing repair, again, has only been 1/3 of the spending. So we still have not dedicated the amount of resources needed to support the long-term recovery.